What's going on? My name is Vince Reed. Welcome to the DM. This is going to be an interesting journey. The DM, digital marketing, digital marketer, digital media, direct message. Ultimately, what I'm going to be doing is teaching you how to make a lot of bread, a lot of money, how to make it rain. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to get into extreme detail. I'm going to be breaking down and sharing with you things that no one talks about, the details that a lot of the gurus skip over when it comes to helping you make money, like how they hide their money, backdoor deals that go on when you launch these affiliate competitions. Do the winners really win? Or do they just give it to other people just because they have the bigger name? We're going to talk about all that. I'm going to share with you how people steal online, how the fake gurus manipulate you in certain situations. I'm going to break down and share with you situations where I literally held over $1 million at my house that another guru gave me. I had no idea that $1 million was right behind me. I'm going to share with you how programmers tried to sabotage some of my software companies, try to delete files thinking I didn't know what was going on. I talked to my lawyers. They'll be getting back to you, don't worry. I'm going to be sharing with you information that people rarely share when it comes to digital marketing, like how they really make money, how they purposely leave out information just to get you to buy. And this is all stories that literally happened. I'm going to share with you how I went from literally zero to earning well over 8 figures online. And I got a 2 Comma Club X award to prove it. We're going to have a lot of fun. Get your popcorn ready. The DM. Let's go. If I close these deals, I'm going to make an additional $50,000. At this time, my house is in pre-foreclosure, my lease is about to be up on my car, and if I don't close these deals, I lose absolutely everything. To this day, in business, I always have the same mentality that no one is ever going to outwork me. Banks stopped lending, everybody was laid off, and I mean, it was crazy.
Hi, my name is Vince Reed.
So I grew up in inner city Los Angeles in a city called Watts. And for those of you who know Los Angeles and know Watts, you know it's not a fun place to live. And early on when I was 3, my parents got divorced. So I lived with my mom and she did the best that she could. But it was rough. I mean, I remember walking home from school and, it seemed like every single day, there were girls that would follow myself and sister home, and my sister would end up getting in these fights. And she would be like, hey, go in the bushes. And I'd be peeking around the bushes, crying, and she'd be beating up like 3 girls. It was crazy. Hearing gunshots at night and just being in that environment. And then on the weekends, going to visit my dad in a, much more peaceful neighborhood and seeing, that there was another side than just violence and all the things that I was exposed to at an early age. I wanted to move with my dad, and I let it be known. When my dad would drop me off after, picking me up for the weekends, I would throw these crazy tantrums. I can remember right now, I remember thinking if I just go crazy enough, then my mom's gonna have to let me leave and get me out of this environment. And that's ultimately what happened, even though I know it was very difficult for her. So shout out to her for letting me move with my dad for a better life. So I remember when I moved with my dad, things changed immediately. It's different being with dad on the weekend. He doesn't see you all week. It's like, hey, we're going to the arcade, we're going to Disneyland, we're doing all these things that you don't get exposed to now you're here. And even that first time we went out to eat, I remember just putting my elbows up on the table, and he's like, get your elbows off the table. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, that's not proper manners, get your elbows off the table. I mean, it was little things like that. He started to instill these different mindset beliefs in me of, letting me know that I could, accomplish anything, establishing pride in my name. You're a Reed, Reeds overachieve, Reeds work hard, Reeds tell the competition to bring a lunch, and we don't quit, we outwork everyone. These type of mindset things were told to me at a very, very young age. So I remember when it was time to go to school. So, I remember I was supposed to be going into 2nd grade when I moved with my dad, and we went to this school and we had to take this placement test. And I remember one day my dad comes to my room and he knocks on the door, and he basically comes and sits down by my bed, and he looks at me and he goes, son, you're dumb. He actually didn't say that. He goes, son, I got your test back, and you can't read, bro. You can't read, so we're gonna have to put you back in first grade. And what was crazy about it was the school that I was in LA gave me straight A's. I had straight A's, and my dad this whole time was like, oh, I got a genius kid, and little did he know he had literally an illiterate kid. So I had to repeat first grade, but it was the best thing that he ever could do for me. And I remember I had this tutor, her name was Mrs. Sheffield, and in one summer I learned how to read, and it was really cool. So fast forward to really, the fun part, and that was my love for sports. Growing up, I thought I was gonna run a football on Sundays. I really took a passion to football, and started playing Pop Warner and was pretty good. And then I played Junior All-American, and then I went to a well-known high school in Southern California called Servite. And I don't want to toot my own horn, but I am the only, still to this day, true freshman to start on varsity all 4 years. I'm just saying. But anyways, we went on, and it was great. I had a lot of offers to play Division I football, but my grades were pretty crappy. My grades were shitty, to be honest with you. In fact, I remember one time a recruit came to our house, and he was like, they were going through my transcripts, and they were telling me all these things that I had to do. And my dad was so frustrated because it went against all of the principles that he had taught me. He literally just got up and walked out of the meeting, and I remember sitting at the table with this recruit, and the guy just like looking at me because he was so mad that I was even in that position that I might have lost my scholarship. So, I think I got lucky. I remember I had a high school counselor, and what's crazy is my high school counselor's husband is one of my best friends and mentors to this day. But she brought me into the office when I was a junior. She's like, hey, if you don't get, these grades, then you're not gonna get the scholarship. And we just worked hard, and I ended up pulling my grades up and getting a scholarship to the University of Colorado. Go Buffs. Coach Prime's about to bring us back. Don't worry, y'all. We about to get those national championships again. It's gonna be fun. Colorado was crazy, it was fun, and there's a lot of lessons that I learned there that I think helped me in business today. I remember when I was in high school, before I got to college, I had a coach in high school, and he would say, Vince, you need to work harder in practice. I had really just got by on natural instincts. I was pretty fast, pretty athletic. I wasn't the fastest, I wasn't the biggest or strongest, but I was pretty smart. My dad and I would watch film a lot, even when I was playing Pop Warner. But I didn't have the go hard every single time, bust my butt every single time. I really just relied on athletic ability, and I had coaches that would tell me that. And the first practice that I had in college, I recognized that I should have listened to those coaches, because that is something that you can't turn on. The first practice, I remember there was this kid, we were running sprints, and never before in sports had anyone ever just beat me in sprints. I'd come close, or maybe someone beat me by a nose, but this kid was way out in front, and I was sprinting, and he looked like he was jogging. And that's when I knew that there was a different level. And to this day, in business, I always have the same mentality that no one is ever going to outwork me. Long story short, got injured in college, but I remember towards the end of my college career, and when I knew that football wasn't going to be my thing, I started to think about what my life was going to be like. I was like, I don't want to go back home and be this athlete that's working at the gas station or the grocery store. And everyone was like, man, do you remember that kid when he played sports? He was pretty good. So I started thinking about life after football. I started thinking about the conversations I would have with my dad, where he would say, hey, you don't have to have football to be successful. You could use your brain to be successful. And at the time I would get mad. I would think he didn't think I was good enough to play at the next level. But he would say, I didn't play professional sports. I was a good athlete, and I made it in business, and so can you. And I started to have these conversations in my head, and I started thinking about, what's next. So one night, I'm laying there, and I'm not playing football anymore. This is right before graduation, and I see this late night infomercial. And it's this guy named Don Lapre.
The second way to make money that I stumbled onto was placing tiny classified ads in the newspaper. If you create and test one tiny classified ad in the newspaper that makes just $30 to $40 profit in a week, it could make you a fortune.
Now, I don't know if you know who Don Lapre is, but he had this little late night infomercial, And it was like, if you place these tiny little ads in newspapers, and if you put them in all these different newspapers and you sell stuff, you can make all this money. And this was the first time I was really exposed to like marketing or being an entrepreneur. I just knew that I wanted to make money and I wanted to be successful, and I didn't know how. So I bought that. That was like the first time I bought something and watched like a sales process. And I got the package and I was so excited. I was like, I'm gonna be rich. And I was going through it. And it was the first time like I saw people like doing different upsells. I remember you had to call this number and this person had to sell me this other thing. I was a broke college kid, I didn't have enough money, but that was the first time I like learned or heard the idea of advertising. And I think, you know, even to this day, being that, you know, I wrote the book Internet Traffic and Leads, I know that, you know, had, you know, some type of impact on me. Even though Don Lapre ended up going to jail for defrauding people. In fact, sad news, he actually killed himself in jail. I do want to thank him because he taught me how to run some ads, but rest in peace. So my days at Colorado were coming to an end, and it was time for me to move back home. And my brother, God rest his soul, he passed away several years ago. He flew out to my graduation and I drove back with him, and he basically said, hey man, why don't you move with me and you know, start your life. And I was like, all right, cool. So my brother flies out, I drive back from Colorado back to California. He lived in Inglewood, and it's like going back from, you know, going to college, kind of going back to the hood. He lived in the hood, but the good hood. Those of you who are from LA know what I'm talking about. He lived kind of close to the stadium, so depending on those of you who know how Los Angeles is, you could go one block over and be in a rough neighborhood and go the other block over and be in the nicest neighborhood ever. So anyways, where he lived was kind of in the middle. But I remember when I moved back with him, there would be these little gang member kids that like lived next door, and they were like, who is this little square kid? So I would like, in the beginning, I'd go on interviews and I'd have like, you know, back then clothes were a lot baggier. So I'd have like this baggy pants on and like this like long sleeve button up shirt with this big old tie, and I'd go on these interviews and nobody would hire me. And it was pretty depressing. I remember like 6 months went by and the NFL draft happened, and I'm seeing like my roommates get drafted to the NFL and I'm not getting any jobs. I started putting on all this weight. I started getting depressed. I did get good at one thing, and that was playing video games. I got pretty good at that. But 6 months go by and nothing happens. I'm like, what am I gonna do with my life? So finally, you know, I let go of my pride and I called my dad. I'm like, hey, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So he makes a call. He had some connections with ING, and he got me an interview. I can get you an interview. So I went and I interviewed at ING Direct, which was a bank. It was like an online bank. And I go in there, and long story short, I get the job. So I'm all excited that I got the job. And what's funny is I'm even excited about what they paid me, which was a whopping $24,000 a year with bonus. And if you do good with the bonus, maybe you could make $32,000 a year. I didn't know, it sounded better than what I was making sitting on the couch playing video games. So I go and I work at ING, and it was crazy. And this was back when, you know, if you had a pulse, you could qualify for a mortgage. This is like during the height of like the real estate boom. This is like 2005-ish. And, you know, I had this headset on, and literally you'd hear a beep, there'd be someone on the phone, and you'd either have to sign them up for an orange savings account where you got a whopping 2% interest, or you had to get them to apply for a mortgage. And it was nonstop. There was no answering the phone. Beep, on the phone. They hang up, beep, another person on the phone. I was on the phone nonstop, and I would work overtime. And I remember I got my first paycheck, and I was expecting all of this money, and it came back of like half of what I thought it was gonna be. And that was the first time that I was exposed to taxes. I was like, what in the hell happened to my money? Like, it was nothing. And I was so mad. And I remember they would listen in on every single call, and they would do everything they can to find one little thing you did wrong or said in a sentence where they could dock you. So I never would end up earning any of the bonuses. So one day, a cousin of mine, he comes down and meets me for lunch. And he tells me he made something like $17,000 or $19,000 that month. And I start telling him, he goes, well, what do you do? And I tell him that, you know, I help these people get bank accounts, or I help them apply for a mortgage. And he goes, well, how much in real estate volume do you have? I had like 50 million to like 100 million in loans, like applications. And what would happen is we would get the application and then they would give those to the broker who was making all the money, but I didn't know any better. I just was helping them get these applications. And he goes, dude, if you would have done that where I work, you would make like $100,000 or even more. And I'm like, for the year? He's like, no, for the month. I'm like, when do I quit? So literally, I'm like, can you get me an interview? He's like, I'll try. I didn't even wait for him to tell me if he can get an interview. I went in the next week and I did two things. I went to the manager and I remember I asked the manager how much he made, and he said he made $52,000. And I said, how long have you worked there? He said, I've worked there for 8 years. And I remember I looked out of the window and that ING was right, like I believe in Century City. And I remember seeing all these Escalades and nice cars and Lamborghinis. And I was like, $52,000 after 8 years is not gonna get me that. And I was like, hey, I'm sorry to tell you, I quit. So I quit right there on the spot. And I had $600 to my name and a car that was running on its last leg. And I had to move back to the OC from LA because this brokerage that my cousin worked for was in Orange County. So I called my dad, say, Dad, I need to move back home. Is it cool? And he goes, absolutely. It sounded good until I realized that I was gonna have to go back and collide with, at the time, my stepmom, who we didn't get along so well. And I'm not gonna bash her because, you know, there were some good times with her as well, but this was just an awkward time. I think her and my dad were kind of going through a few things here or there, and she made it tough. For example, my cousin goes, hey, I get you an interview in 2 weeks. So I had like, 2 weeks for the interview to live back with my dad and my stepmom. So she goes, all right, well, you need to hang your clothes in the garage. Like we had these like little, I don't know, kind of closet things in our garage. And she's like, you need to go put your clothes in there. I'm like, so you're telling me that I need to go to the garage to get my clothes? There's a closet right here. Can I move the clothes that are in the closet to the garage and switch it? She goes, no. And I'm like, I'm out of here. So I had $600. I remember I packed everything into my car. I was pretty mad. I was like, this isn't gonna work. We're gonna clash. And I drove to South Orange County to Irvine. And this was before it was nice and all the nice apartment buildings and all the beautiful homes that are there today. There was this apartment building that was just coming up. It was amazing. And I remember there was a sign on it that said $200 deposit and like a free month rent or something like that. And I'm like, well, I got $600. Let me just go in there and see. I had no idea where I was gonna stay. But anyhow, I go to this apartment and I have no idea how I get this apartment. I have to give them $200 and I don't have to pay rent for 45 days. So the next week I have the interview. I go into this interview for this brokerage, not even knowing that I have the job. Start talking to the guy and he goes, okay, we can definitely hire you, but you can't start for 2 weeks. And I go, okay, great. And I start to walk out of that meeting and I turn around and I go, oh, I just have a question before I leave. Is it cool if I just start working now, like before my 2 weeks? He's like, yeah, well, you won't get your base salary and like you won't get, all the benefits and stuff. I'm like, I don't care. They were paying like a $2,000 draw. I'm like, I don't care. I just want to get started because remember, I only had 45 days to basically make money to pay this rent, which was I think $1,600 at the time. And he goes, yeah, I guess that's fine. And then I turn back around again and I go, if I do, I forget the number, 50 million in volume, whatever the number was I was doing at ING, is it true that you guys paid 3% or whatever the percentage is and I could make 100,000? And they like laugh, they start busting up laughing at me. Like, yeah, you'd make that. I guess no one's doing that kind of math or numbers. And I go, one more thing. What do I need to do to be the number one in this office? He goes, you just need to make more calls than anyone else. I go, okay, got it. I'm like, where do I sit? So he tells me where to sit. I got the job. And I remember before I left that day, I went around to all of the people that worked in that office and I said, do you guys have leads that I can call? Because I was blown away at everybody just standing around. Like everybody was just standing around talking. And what would happen is in the beginning of the day, they would come to you and they would hand you these fresh leads, like internet leads. And this is where I started to like understand lead generation a little bit. And everybody wanted the fresh leads. You get 2 to 3 a day. And they would call them and then they'd put the ones that people weren't answering away. So by the end of the day, my desk was stacked full of leads. And I remember I went home. I had an air mattress and I had a little TV, for those of you who can remember, with a little VCR at the bottom. And I remember I went to the store with my little $400 I had left to my name and I bought like some peanut butter and jelly and some cereal, and I cried myself to sleep that night. I was like, I don't know how the hell the clock is ticking. I've got 30 days. I don't have any money. This is gonna be crazy. So I go back in and I just make calls. I just bust my butt. I do just what that guy said, make more calls than anyone else. By the time I actually got the job, which was 2 weeks later, I already had 7 loans submitted in the pipeline and closed, I don't know exactly how many, 3 or 4. And my first check, literally like a week before I had to pay rent, was like $6,700, $6,700. And I went and I bought some couches and I moved my air mattress to the bedroom and I was moving on up like the Jeffersons. You know, what was crazy about that time was anywhere you go in life, there's always mentors and people that you can learn from. You know, one of my favorite quotes today is that the wise learns more from the fool than the fool learns from the wise. And there was this guy, and this was, I would consider him my first real mentor in real estate, even though like I had my cousins at the time were great. I would bug them all the time and I'd like call them and be like, can you just role play on the phone with me? And they'd be like, okay, and we would role play mortgages. But there was this one guy, he was doing like $30,000 a month at the time. And at the time, that was like the most money I ever had seen. And by this time, you know, I was pretty good. I was one of the top loan officers in the company, but no one was touching this guy. Where I was doing 4 to 6 deals a month, this guy was literally doing 10 to 15. And one time I see him out and he's eating dinner at this place that's kind of like a bar, lounge, club type place. And he calls me over and he, long story short, tells me he's leaving. And I could not believe that a guy that had everything, this guy was making all of the money. He had the like cool cubicle, like the tall one that nobody could see in. All of the managers loved him. He was killing it. And, you know, benefits and all this stuff, was gonna leave and start his own thing. And he asked me to go with him. And I was like, man, I'm doing pretty good here. I mean, at this point, I'm doing, you know, at least 10 to 15 grand a month. And I'm like, all right, well, if this guy is willing to leave this situation, I'm willing to, you know, roll the dice and go with him. So we go to this office, and I remember I went in and I'm like, dude, can you like teach me how you are doing it? And this is a lesson for everybody watching it. You just have to go figure out and find the people that are, you know, doing well and pick their brain, because you'll be shocked that there's always these little details, kind of like what I'm sharing with you, you know, on these episodes, that can change your life. And I'm like, how was it that you were dominating? They were giving you like extra leads, right? No. You were like getting extra deals given to you. No, I mean, he didn't cheat. He showed me the strategy. And if this was a real estate show, I'd get into explaining to what he actually taught in great detail. But I will tell you the key point, and it's the point in business and anything you do. He said, ultimately what I do is I expose everything to my clients. So I tell them the good and bad, how we make money, how we come up with the rate, and I give them the absolute best deal possible. I'm not trying to make extra money. You know, for example, if you are trying to get a deal or loan or something like that and you go, no, that's too high. Typically, they'll come back and try to lower the fees. He's like, I don't do that. I give them the best deal and that's it. And I explain to them what the other people are gonna do before they do it, and that's how I do it. There's a little bit more into that, but the key point to this is, you know, do good, you know, by your clients, and good things will happen to you. So ultimately, after he shared with me these strategies, I went on in that very first month, closed over 10 deals for the first time in my life, and made a lot of money, bought my first house, and I was off and rolling. So after that, it seemed like overnight, I start making more money, buying more things, and spending money faster than it was coming in, and getting these crazy offers. I started having people approach me to start these, what they call net branch opportunities. And I go off, and within like literally 7 months of being in the real estate industry, I'm now have my own little company, and at one point up to 30 loan officers, and things are rolling. And then it happens. Literally overnight it happened.
The signs were everywhere, but now it's official, we are in a recession. The research group that makes that determination made it today and said the recession actually started a year ago.
It felt like I got punched in the face. The recession hit. And I don't know if those of you can remember this time, but it just was like overnight. Even though we had heard the rumors, very similar to how it is today. People they get used to the good times and they can't believe when the bad times hit. Well, the bad times hit pretty bad. I mean, banks stopped lending, everybody was laid off, and I mean, it was crazy. So I had to close down. And I remember being the last one in the office, literally breaking down cubicles, again, in a different way, crying, trying to figure out what the heck am I going to do. Now, before this happened, like 3 or 4 months before this kind of sudden, breakdown of everything, I had met my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, and she kind of saw the very end of how everything was going down. I remember being there and I'm like, is this girl gonna leave me? Like I literally have absolutely nothing. Everything is crap. I went home and started trying to do loans here or there from home. And then I get this call from a broker friend of mine, and he goes, hey, there's a new way to do deals. I know you probably don't believe me, but there's these FHA loans that are still getting through, and we're making a killing. Be in the office next week. So long story short, I go to the office, and the very first day I submit 7 deals. Clean approvals, they come back. And this is when everything's going to crap. I go home and I'm like dancing around the house to my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, hey, we're back. If I close these deals, I'm gonna make an additional $50,000. Like, it's crazy. So I'm driving into work, and I guess I'm forgetting to tell you the most important part of this whole story, which is at this time, my house is in pre-foreclosure, my lease is about to be up on my car, and if I don't close these deals, I lose absolutely everything. I'm driving in that day, and I just didn't feel right. Like something was off. It's like one of those horror movies where, it's just an eerie feeling and somebody's about to jump out the bushes with a chainsaw. Like that's what it felt like. So I get to the office and I open up my email and I see this email and the subject line says, sorry. I knew what it was. It proceeds to say, sorry, we can't fund these deals. The banks are no longer lending. Please call back your clients, let them know. So I have to call back all of these people. I get cursed at, racial slurs. I knew that you couldn't do it. Blah, blah, blah. I call each and every one of them. And I'm like, I'm done with real estate. Like, there's no way I'm going back to this. I remember I pack up all my files. I'm like, I'm not even gonna go tell the broker that I'm leaving because he's gonna try to talk me into staying. And I grab my stuff and I walk towards the door and I stop. And I say, I cannot go home and tell my girlfriend, now my wife, that I have nothing. I gotta go do something. So I turned around and I went to the computer and I went to Craigslist, because back then, that's where you went, at least that's where I thought you went to find jobs. And I went to the sales section, and like a sore thumb, it stood out. I still can see it right now as I'm telling you this story. Okay, there was this ad that said, make money on Google. And at the time, I could barely send an attachment on an email. Even though I'd done all of this stuff in real estate, there were processors, there were people that knew how to do all this stuff. But to me, making money on Google sounded a lot better than flipping burgers. I started to hear my brother's voice. And at the time, my brother was into digital marketing. And going all the way back to that apartment that I had, my brother used to call me and tell me about this network marketing or MLM thing that he was doing. And there was a guy in that apartment building that was selling the same thing. And I just remember feeling icky by it. Like he actually, I remember signed me up and we would go to these meetings. I'm like, I could never do this. So in my mind, that's what my brother was doing. But he was talking about internet marketing and lead generation, all this stuff. And now when I see this make money on Google, I'm like, it has to be a sign. I get in the car knowing that I'm likely going to lose my house. I have to drive my car back the next week and give it back. I'm going to have absolutely nothing. There's a good chance this girl is probably going to leave me because I'm a complete loser at the time. But I didn't feel like scared. In fact, I had this feeling like you feel if you've ever like bought a lottery ticket when the jackpot's like a couple $100 million or $1 billion, something like that, where you're like, what if I win? Like that little make money on Google gave me this feeling like, what if I actually win, right? So I get home and I still see her face right now. She's looking at me because she's expecting these deals to have gone through and me to make all this money and save the house and be back. And she goes, what happened? I go, well, nothing. Nothing happened. They're not funding those deals. I got this email. I tell her the whole story. And she's just kind of like looking at me. And I go, but I got something else to do. I figured out something else that I can do to make some money. And excited, like, what? I go, I'm going to make money on Google. And she just looks at me. And she goes, well, at least do a little research. And I was like so happy she said that. It didn't tell me I was a complete idiot, because just like everyone else in the world, and people that still know me to this day can't believe I'm like the lead generation guy, because again, I could barely send an attachment on an email when I got started. I didn't go to school for digital marketing. It's something I taught myself. I went up to my office at my house that I was losing in pre-foreclosure, and I just jumped on the internet. I remember I went and researched the lady. I called the lady. I looked at her stuff, and I saw a couple scam reviews. And back then, anything you see on the internet you think is real. So I remember calling her, and I just didn't go with her because of that little review. Sorry, lady. But the cool thing is that led me down this rabbit hole. I started to learn about direct sales, about digital marketing. And I remember I started seeing different direct marketing companies, and I started to see this guy pop up on every single ad. And I don't know why or how, but when I was searching these different companies, I kept seeing these ads, and instantly I got it. I'm like, hold on a second. I remember I literally stood up from my chair, and I looked at the computer, and I'm like, hold on a second. There's got to be another guy like me that lost everything and is about to basically lose his life to all of his money's going to be gone, and went online to find a way to make money. I click on his ad, and he's on every keyword. I mean, literally every direct sales company that I could find, he's on every keyword. So I call this guy, and I go, hey man, can you teach me how to run these ads? He's like, well, I'll teach you, but you got to join this direct sales company. To get started in this program, it was like $2,000. And I'm broke. I don't have any money. I don't know how I scrambled up and got $2,000, but I did. And I send this guy the money, and it was so scammy. It wasn't even like you paid online. I had to literally send this guy a cashier's check for $2,000. And I ended up buying into this direct sales company. It was these DVDs, like Tony Robbins, self-help type stuff. And if you sell it, you get a $1,000 commission. So I call him okay, can you show me how to do these ads? And he literally goes, okay, you set up, back then it was called Google AdWords, because there was no social media. This is before Facebook ads, before Instagram ads. And he goes, you set up this Google AdWords account, you find keywords that people are searching for, and your ads will pop up and you're rich. That's all he taught me. And I go, okay. And now at least I have this thing to sell. I'm gonna go try it. So I had to go round up some more money, and for whatever reason, I borrowed or got $1,000. And again, this is a lesson. If you want something bad enough, you'll figure it out. I load $1,000 into Google AdWords, and I put my URL, which is the link to this direct sales company that I joined. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be rich tomorrow. And I turn it on, and I'm so excited. I'm dreaming about how I'm gonna what I'm gonna get and how I'm gonna be back, and all these people that doubted me, and I'm gonna prove everybody wrong, and blah, 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 blah. And I wake up and I run to the computer, and I look at my account, and I see, the first thing I see is I got all these clicks. I can see I got 3,000 to 5,000 people here visited my website. I'm like, cool. And then I go to the thing, I'm like, the money's gotta be there. And I go to the company that I joined, and I'm like, where are the leads? There's no leads, maybe 1 or 2 leads, and 0 sales. And my money is gone. The $1,000 is gone. So I'm like, man, did I just get scammed by this guy? I just sent this guy $2,000, and I just lost another $1,000, and I didn't have any of this money. I'm about to lose my house. So I call the guy back, and I'm feeling weird, because I'm excited that literally thousands of people clicked, real people clicked, but I'm kind of disturbed because I didn't make any money. I'm like, dude, I put this money in Google Ads, got a bunch of clicks, no sales. What's up? He's like, yeah, man, sometimes that happens. I'm like, sometimes that happens. So I asked him, I say, is there anyone that could help me learn how to do this better? Because I knew that this was legit. I mean, I had clicked on an ad, I sent money. I'm like, I know that there's something to this. I had seen all the leads from the real estate days. I know if I learn how to do this, I could absolutely dominate. He's like, yeah, there's this guy, he's the GOAT of digital marketing. He is teaching all these people how to do it. He's made, 20 some odd $1 million in digital marketing. I just started going through his stuff. It's pretty good. I can send you, some of his information, and you could test it out yourself. And I'm like, please, man, send it over to me. And then I'm like, well, how much is it gonna cost? And he says, I hope you enjoyed that episode. As you can see, it's getting good, and it's only going to get better. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. I'll see you on the next one.